Good morning, good morning, good morning, my people. What's up? Hope and trust that all is going good. Today is Saturday the 10th day of January 2026, and the time right now is 8:41 a.m. And I hope and trust that all is having a good day thus far and will have a good day thus far. Yeah, somebody's laughing at my backdrop. Trump, yeah, it wasn't me. Well, about 6 days ago, or with about 6 days to go, until we would have reached a month since Donald Trump signed the proclamation, and that have turned the Caribbean, or at least some Caribbean countries, upside down. I think the proclamation was signed on or around the 16th of December, today being the 10th, so 6 more days or thereabout for a month. Let us recap. Let us recap what we know thus far. As I just said, about there was a partial visa ban for new visas and renewals put in place effective the 1st of January 2026. And the Caribbean countries that were affected was Antigua and Dominica. Other Caribbean countries that were affected by that partial ban situation would have been Cuba and Haiti. Reason given, at least as far as Antigua and Dominic is concerned, the reason given was, well, as far as the reason given was CIP non-residency. And we would know by now that of all the Caribbean countries that have the CIP program in place, Antigua have been the only one with a residential component, albeit that it was reduced from 35 days to 5. But we always had a residency component to our CIP. Yet still, again, as I said, the countries who were affected is Antigua and Dominica with that partial visa ban for new visas and renewals. Then we had the introduction of Antigua and Dominica again into a pilot program, a pilot travel bond program where, depending on the visa, H1, H2, um, you would have to put down a bond of 5,000, 10,000, 15,000, depending on the interview. And as I said, the countries that were affected would have been Antigua, Dominica, and again, the other Caribbean countries included with this thing would have been Cuba and Venezuela. And the reason given for that, my understanding is that it had to do with the rate of citizens from these countries overstaying their time in America. Um, I saw a post from Frankie Southwell. Let me give the name where I saw that from, who posted something from timescaribbeanonline.com. Timescaribbeanonline.com that showed US visa overstay rates in the Caribbean 2025. And he asked to see where your country stands. Barbados at 0.52%, Trinidad and Tobago 0.77%, St. Kitts Nevis 1.36%, Antigua at 1.38%, the Bahamas figures covered over, Grenada 1.9, St. Lucia 1.96, St. Vincent and the Grenadines 3.23, Dominica 3.71, Dominican Republic 4.59, Jamaica 5.25, Guyana 5.59, Cuba 7.69, and Haiti was 31.38 from what I'm seeing there. So, as I said, Antigua and Dominica was made a part of that pilot program. Um, St. Kitts was not 1.36. Grenada was not, at least as far as we know, 1.91. St. Lucia was not. 1.96. St. Vincent was not 3.23. Those would have been higher than us. And for what I gathered from Frankie's post, I think they were saying they were looking at 10% and above. I think that's what it's supposed to say. But here comes Antigua and Dominica again. And then also we would have what I refer to as the third party deportee situation. That is, deportees that America want to get rid of, that the countries where these people come from either don't want them or America don't have no diplomatic relations with those countries. So they're seeking to send those people to other countries. So far, from what we've heard, Antigua, Dominica, and St. Kitts have agreed. What they have agreed to, we really don't know. What they have agreed to, we really don't know, because what the St. Kitts Prime Minister is talking about don't make no sense. As far as Antigua is concerned, you have a non-binding agreement. So we still have to wait. And as I keep saying, until I see these things in writing, I'm not really going to be caught up with that, to be honest with you. I don't know what they don't know what they're about, and they're telling the citizens, let me speak to Antigua, all kind of crap that we don't know about. Right? So let's wait to see what comes out and what the people will accept from what the people will not accept from the sitting government. Because as I said, and I'll say again, you can't be a part of the problem and a part of the solution in the workshop. At least it doesn't work so in my book. So that's a quick recap there. People, we have a mystery to solve. We have a mystery to solve. When you're not getting information, you have to look at what obtains, and you have to make sense of what is being put before you. For me, I'm not gobbling down what people tell me. It must make sense to me. And I would encourage persons out there to look at what is being said. And what that makes sense to you, question it. What that makes sense to you, question it. Because we have been accepting crap from politicians, not only in Antigua, in the Caribbean region for too long. That's why we are where we are. That's just my opinion. Anyway, yesterday, Friday the 9th. Oh, no, before I go to that. After Maduro was taken from Venezuela by the United States, and those are the words I want to use, because there's going to be a lot of lawsuits going on, so that is yet to be determined. Certain things are yet to be determined in that. But after Maduro was taken from Venezuela by the United States, he was taken to America, and he was charged. The indictment claim allegedly, or the indictment allegedly implicates unnamed Caribbean politicians. Right? The indictment implicated unnamed Caribbean politicians. And I want you to go with me now. I want you to go with me what I'm saying, because words are very important. No name was given, to the best of my understanding. This is coming directly from the indictment. Through this drug trafficking, Nicolas Maduro Moros, the defendant, and corrupt members of his regime enable corruption fueled by drug trafficking throughout the region. That's the Caribbean region. The transshipment points in Honduras, Guatemala, and Mexico similarly relied on a culture of corruption, in which cocaine traffickers operating in those countries paid a portion of their own profits to politicians who protected and aided them. In turn, these politicians used the cocaine fuel payments to maintain and augment their political power. So too were politicians along the Caribbean route, corrupted by cocaine traffickers who would pay them for protection from arrest and to allow favored traffickers to operate with impunity as they trafficked cocaine from Venezuela north towards the United States. Thus, at every step, relying on the producers in Colombia transporters and distributors in Venezuela, and recipients and redistributors on transshipment points north. The traffickers enriched themselves and their corrupt benefactors who protected and aided them. Right? Now, if you're not familiar with what the map of the Caribbean looks like, coming down from or coming up from Latin America, coming up, you're gonna pass, and I'm talking about on the Caribbean seaside. You're gonna pass Grenada, St. Vincent. Off to the east is Barbados, St. Lucia. After St. Lucia, it might be Martinique, Dominica, Guadeloupe, Antigua Barbuda, and west of Antigua Barbuda, you have St. Kitts and Nevis in the area down there. And then you come down, you're going down to Haiti, Cuba, going up to America. Right? So keep that map in your mind if you don't know it. If you don't know it, go and look for it and you see it. So that is what is in the indictment. The indictment says politicians along the Caribbean route, that's the route that I just mentioned coming up, corrupted by cocaine traffickers who would pay them to protect from arrest and to allow favored traffickers to operate with impunity as they traffic cocaine from Venezuela, that's down in the south, coming up north towards America, towards the United States. Right? All right. So what was Maduro charged with? And what is the evidence? I looked at a story on BBC, and a former federal prosecutor, someone by the name of Sarah Kriskoff, contributed to an article. This is a portion of the article that I want to share. No. It is difficult to assess the legal merits of the case against Maduro because the indictment does not include what evidence prosecutors have against him, said defense attorney and former federal prosecutor Sarah Kriskoff. Generally, in international narcotics trafficking indictments or charging documents, there are a lot of conclusions and not a lot of specificity, said Kriskoff, who worked for over a decade in the court where Maduro is being tried. The document does not technically have to detail what evidence prosecutors have against the defendant. And for large-scale drug trafficking cases like this, much of the evidence is confidential or classified, she said. Kriskoff expects part of the trial to be closed to the public and to be closed to the press and the public, and that defense attorneys will have to get security clearance and review some of the material in highly secured areas the government uses for handling classified intelligence. So, what this former federal prosecutor is saying is that she can't speak much to the legal merits because the indictment does not include the evidence that prosecutors have against Maduro. So you really don't know. You really don't know. Now, before I go on, I want to remind us of there was a case during the UPP time, a case in America where I think the gentleman's name was Ash. I think he was the chair of some kind of a UN committee or something. And the Americans charged either between 10 to 12 persons with money laundering, etc., etc. All of them said they were not guilty. I must go back and look for it because I know I have it in my records. All of them said they were not guilty. When it was all said and done, when the matter came to court and so, all of them with the exception of Ash, went into a plea arrangement with the government. Remember, they started from not being guilty now to enter into some kind of plea arrangement. Ash, I believe it was reported, died by accident while he was working out, I think, in his gym, and a dumbbell fell across his throat. I think that's the understanding that I remember. But the point I'm making is, all these people started off as, we're not guilty. When the indictment became public, they were not guilty. But at the end of the day, they all ended up cutting the deal. You know? So just keep that in your mind. When I read this part as to not the US, that is, not exposing the evidence that they have, my mind ran back to that case. Be reminded. Well, yesterday, Friday, 26th here, 26th of January. No, not 26th, the 9th of January, 2026. Sorry about that. Our national defense team held an interview, a public interview. I'm not sure if we've had that type of situation or interview in the past. I'm not sure. I can't recall it. That our national defense team would have come to the public. I can't recall it. But somebody can correct me if I'm wrong. But I'm not recalling it as I'm speaking now. I've spoken to some people, and they're telling me that that is the national security team, was encouraged to address the nation. That's what one set of persons are telling me. And another set of persons are telling me that it was their duty to address the nation based on the circumstances. For those who might not know or might not have seen the interview, the persons on the national defense team and who were at this public interview were the chief of defense staff, that is Brigadier, they have here Talbert Benjamin, but I think it's Talbert Benjamin. The director of the ONDCP, Colonel Edward Croft, Commissioner of Police, Mr. Everton Jeffers, and the chief of immigration, that would be Miss Katrina Yearwood. Those are the persons at the head table. And the interview was facilitated by Frankie Thomas. I think he said his rank was assistant superintendent. Right? I think he said his rank was assistant superintendent. Stand to be corrected, but that's what my memory is telling me. And what I'm going to be getting into now is the highlights from that public interview by our national defense team. Highlights for me. I'm not sure if it's still there, but the interview is on ABS Facebook page, so you all can go there. For those who have not seen it, you all can go there and look at it, listen to it, see if I say anything here that's not so. You all can sort that out. But that's where I got it from. ABS Facebook page. Somebody, I did record it on my computer, but to be honest, I haven't gone back to it yet. But I looked at it from ABS. So Mr. Thomas, as I said, Frankie Thomas, he was the moderator, if you want to call it that. And he indicated that there are certain matters of importance that the heads of these various security departments that I mentioned above, they needed to bring to the attention of the nation of Antigua and Barbuda. And then he passed over the proceedings to the director of the ONDCP, Colonel Edward Croft. Colonel Edward Croft indicated, among other things, and that's why I'm encouraging persons to go to ABS and look for it if you want to get the full thing. But remember, I said these are my highlights, right? Colonel Edward Croft indicated that his statement The statement is a joint statement by members of the security forces to just educate and inform the nation of certain developments, both regionally and globally, that affects Antigua and Barbuda, and we thought it fit to communicate some information to you. So, according to him, we thought, being the team thought, that it was fit to communicate some information to us, the public. Again, as I said, somebody will tell me if it has ever been done before, but we'll see. He continues, Antigua and Barbuda reaffirms its commitment to safeguarding national and regional security through sustained action against drug trafficking, money laundering, firearms trafficking, and organized crime. And he went on. Blah. Law enforcement agencies represented here today, that is yesterday, the people that I said above, recognize that recent counter-drug efforts by the government of the United States of America aimed at disrupting narcotic flows from producing countries to the south has resulted in allegations reported in sections of the print and electronic media that government officials, politicians, leaders of governments generally within the Caribbean were corrupted by narco traffickers. Now, as I said, Croft said sections of the print media and electronic media, it was said that government official blah 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 blah. I don't know if section of media. I think that came out of an indictment that has been made public by the American government. Anyway, let's note that people. It is suggested, I'm just continuing now. It is suggested that Antigua and Barbuda was a part of the alleged Caribbean route and its officials were involved. But I don't know where that suggestion came from. I haven't seen it. I haven't seen that printed. I haven't seen that printed no place. I haven't seen it on Facebook. I haven't seen it put out by the Americans. I haven't seen it no place. In print, that is, where it is suggested that Antigua and Barbuda played a primary part. Again, I might have it wrong, so persons can correct me if I'm wrong. Recent commentary in the public domain and on social media has suggested that Antigua and Barbuda or its politicians, officials, are involved in alleged regional narcotics trafficking routes. Now, I keep telling you all about words, right? It says here, in the public domain and on social media, has suggested. So I guess it's a suggestion because if anybody stated that as a matter of fact, I would suppose that the government officials and other officials would be able to sue somebody. Because I would assume that these persons would be saying to whoever make this statement, hey, you say that Antigua and Barbuda, I'm an official of Antigua and Barbuda and I'm involved in that, so come on, go court, you prove it. And we know that some people love to sue. So keep that in mind also. We, collectively, the head of the agencies, are not aware of any incident investigation, or official finding that identifies Antigua and Barbuda, its institution, or its officials in this regard. Well, this is we're not aware of. Who knows? Let's see. When the evidence comes, we'll know what happened. As the professional heads of the agencies responsible for national security and law enforcement, we state unequivocally that Antigua and Barbuda has worked vigorously and consistently to counter narcotics trafficking, and that this sustained effort is reflected in independent international assessments that classify the country as low risk for such activity. Now, I'm not debating what Mr. Croft is saying. I'm not debating that at all. But when he speaks of we have been we are Antigua Barbuda and blah blah blah, in independent international assessments that they classify the country as low risk in such activity. That very well might be true. Question I ask is, with that information still, or with that rating still, can it prevent anything? Because I now go back to what Frankie Southwell posted, where it is shown, the information is shown there that Antigua sits at the fourth position in terms of visa overstay rates. Caribbean countries in America, the fourth. Behind of us would have been Barbados, not a part of the pilot project. Not Barbados, sorry. Bahamas, not a part of the project. Grenada, not a part of the pilot project. St. Lucia, not a part of the pilot project. St. Vincent, not a part of the pilot project. Dominica is. Dominican Republic, not a part. Jamaica, not a part. Guyana, not a part. And all of these that I call from Bahamas go down to Dominican Republic. All of them have a higher percentage overstay rate than Antigua. But yet still, Antigua and Dominica have made it into the book to be a part of the pilot project. So when I heard it being spoken about our independent assessment, my mind ran back to that. As heads of the operational agencies, we affirm that our actions are guided by that policy direction and the law and intelligence alone. And he continues on. So I guess he's trying to say they are guided by the law and intelligence alone. But he did say by that policy. We affirm that our actions are guided by that policy direction. Boom. So I guess, well, I'll leave it to the public to figure out who sets policy. Who sets policy? Figure that out. After that, basically, he opened the floor to the persons who were there. The first question, well, two questions, if I'm not mistaken, was put to the table by Elizabeth Fain. She was representing Point Broadcasting Network. To me, question didn't really make no sense, so I didn't really keen on that, to me, if you ask me. So y'all can go and see what she asked. Also, after her, there was a question asked by Jerisa Jeremy. And Miss Jeremy was representing Observer. And again, to me, the question did not make no sense. So I didn't really keen on that. Someone asked a question of the immigration head. I don't remember who that person was, to be honest with you. And then the next person to ask question was, I believe, Mr. Buford from ABS itself. And let's get into Mr. Buford contribution to that. He says, there's a superseding indictment that has been issued by the Department of Justice against the post-president Nicolas Maduro Morris of Venezuela. To be clear, the statement that you read, Lieutenant Colonel Croft, are you saying there's no indication that Antigua Barbuda or any of its officials have been in any way implemented in the superseding indictment? That was a question. And Mr. Croft responded, that's correct. We have no information to indicate that that is so. We know that there's quite a bit of speculation in the media. And so part of safeguarding Antigua and Barbuda's reputation is to come and clear the air to ensure that Antigua and Barbuda, its official and its leaders, that we have no information to indicate that anyone is involved or the country is involved in that allegation. And he went on. Well, I keep talking about words, and maybe it's just me, how I speak, how I formulate things in my head. I would have answered. At this point in time, we have no information. And that would be the truth. Because at this point in time, there's no information to that effect, one way or the next. I'm not saying the person's implicated, the person not implicated. I'm saying what obtains no as we know it. Because as I said earlier, when I went to the article from BBC with the former prosecutor, what she says is that the evidence are not necessarily put out in the indictment in the first stage. So we will have to watch and see how this thing proceed in order to how we're going to go. But for me, personally, if I was answering that question, I would have said that's correct. At this point in time, based on all the information that has been shared with us, and based on what we know, such is not the case. I don't know what's going to happen tomorrow. That's me. So that's how I was going to that. Then a question was put to the police commissioner. And I have to laugh. I have to laugh because the Lord work in mysterious ways. His wonders to perform. A question to the police commissioner, Mr. Jeffers. There's been a lot of discussion about the extent. Let me just line them up. Sorry about that. There's been a lot of discussion about the extent to which the U.S. can assist Antigua, Barbuda, and other countries in the region to track firearms coming from the U.S. to this region. We are not a region that manufactures firearms, so we are in harm's way because we are on the path of firearms. We're in harm's way, therefore, in harm's way. Any assistance, any further assistance, any further discussions with the U.S. that you are aware of to assist in tracing firearms, especially ghost guns? And the commissioner said, or the commissioner answered to that question. Pleasant good morning. Yes, I would not be able to go into much details, but what I can say, we have been using the E-Trace system, and there are some other systems that we've been using working along with the US, and so in some instances, we know what is happening ahead of time, even though sometimes when things get to Antigua Barbuda, it seems to just disappear. I'll leave it at that. That's what he says. And then to that, Buford responded, disappear? How come? And the commissioner then said, when I say disappear, I mean we will be notified. And then after we're notified, then what we find ourselves seeing is that when it gets to Antigua, or if it gets to Antigua, let me put it that way, that nothing appears to have arrived here. And then Buford said, that seems like it needs another press conference with you, Commissioner Jeffers. We'll talk about that. Right? And discussions continued. Now, when I heard it, I said, huh? And I smiled to myself because from what I gather, the commissioner was saying is that there would have been information sharing between the US and Antigua and Barbuda on the illicit trafficking of guns, right? And the commissioner is saying between getting that information and whatever plane or ship related to the information that they got gets here, to use his words, we know what is happening ahead of time, even though sometimes when things get to Antigua and Barbuda, it seems to just disappear. How did that happen? I can imagine somebody might have been tapping Mr. Jeffers on his foot, or maybe something clicked in his head, right? Because he then came back shortly after when the exchange and said, if I may just clear up what I've just said, because it sounds as if stuff are arriving in Antigua. What I'm saying is that we'll get information, but at the end of the day, sometimes the information that we receive does not coincide or lead to any results coming to Antigua. But yes, We have been getting help from the USA via the e-trace system and also by the remarking or rebranding of those firearms. As I said, I can't say anything else because once they get here and they're confiscated, we're able to use a particular method in order to trace them. So the clarity will certainly follow up with you as well. Um, to me, that certainly sounds as if the Commissioner of Policy is saying that information provided by the United States sometimes send them on a wild goose chase. That's how that sounds to me. Because, let me just go back to his words. Let me not use my words. What I'm saying is that we'll get information. Must get information from the US. But at the end of the day, sometimes the information I receive does not coincide or lead to any results coming to Antigua. So that would have to be bad information that coming to Antigua in layman's language. But we will hear if there's another interview with the police or with the commissioner of police or his representatives to see how they tidy that up, if you want to call it, tidy that up. Another question was put to the head of immigration about the program being used by tourism, and she gave it good reviews that it was working. During the wrap up now, shortly thereafter, they went to the wrap up, and Mr. Croft said, we do not operate based on speculation. We operate based on the evidence that is before us, intelligence, and the law. And he went on. And as he was speaking, my mind ran on an incident. The national security team, if I'm not mistaken, and somebody can correct me, I was trying to get in touch with Mr. Pompey for clarification. That team is headed by the sitting prime minister, whoever it is at the time, I would believe. Because I think the sitting prime minister is the national security head. Stand to be corrected. Correct me if I'm wrong. But that's my understanding. So you would want to believe that if the national security head, the minister, is speaking about certain matters, coming, that would come out of that he or she, whoever is operating at the time, as the minister, would have been appraised or briefed from these different people who head these departments, or if they have a meeting, they will get information from there. So when I heard Mr. Croft said that they operate based on evidence that is before us, intelligence, and the law, and I'm assuming that the minister is informed coming out of that process. If I hear a minister of national security says to the public that beef is known to the ONDCP for drugs, where would the minister get that information from? And if the minister gets that information from the head of the ONDCP, based on their investigation and intelligence, beef is known to drugs. And beef is not arrested, taken in and arrested. Does that mean that bad intelligence went to the minister? I'm just wondering. What do you all think about that? I'm just wondering. Because I can't see that the minister is advised that beef is involved in drugs, that whatever information the minister gets, he or she is quite comfortable in saying to people that, hey, beef is known to the ONDCP. Not to speak that if beef is in a particular position that might be adverse to him or her at the time, and then nothing happens. Okay. Think about that, my people. Just think about these kind of things. No, I'm hearing from, a lot of people talk to me. I'm hearing from some people that the narrative of some person or persons will be that the debacle that we're in, the visa, the partial visa delay and blah blah blah, the bond, the debacle that the country is now in. That's what I'm hearing. That the narrative of some person or persons will be that it has nothing to do with them, but it has to do with citizen or citizens of this country, for instance, who would have gone overseas, have delivered their children overseas and not pay their bills and them kind of stuff. Those are the things I'm hearing that will be the narrative pushed by person or persons as to the reason why we find ourselves in this debacle that we find ourselves in now. Right? It is the citizens and residents of this country who have gotten us to the point where we are. I have been told by some of those persons that if that is the case, the people who will be pushing this must be crazy. Something must be wrong with their head. So let us listen in this upcoming week, from today going forward to the upcoming week, to hear what our representatives have to say to us, as to why we find ourselves in this debacle. Let us see if anything at all is attributed to our representatives now as to why we're in the position that we're in. Let us see if it is said that, well, America wants to run everybody country, and we're against America running everybody country. We believe that we're a sovereign state and we're supposed to be able to do blah, 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 blah. So America is the problem. Let us wait and see. If the narrative that I'm told will be held by person or persons where the fault or the reason for us being where we are is because of residents and citizens of this country. Let us wait and see. As my backdrop says, Trump, I know for sure it wasn't me. I know for sure it wasn't me, Trump. But bless up my people. Keep safe. And as Arville Grant used to say, by the way, Arville Grant, where we come Arville Grant, boy? Why did he still around here? Arville Grant used to say, watch the ball on to the bat. Watch the ball on to the bat. And walk good. Keep listening, people. Keep listening to the news. Keep listening to what people are saying so that you know. And don't take a 6 for a 9. And don't take a 9 for a 6. Bless up.